Am I the asshole for telling our new neighbor my son doesn't work for her and her daughter? This has been going in for 2 long months now. We had a new neighbor who's a single mother in her late 40s and her teenager daughter. They're both lovely and she told me that she got divorced not too long ago. Her family lives in another town and she's beginning her life as a single mother. My son, 16, has been helping them since day one. He has helped them move their stuff into their new house. And even unpack boxes. She would have him go to the grocery store with a list of things she and her daughter needs. She'd ask him to fix a door handle, take away the garbage, fix her car, move stuff to the backyard, clean the garden and so on. She wouldn't stop asking favors here and there. She'd knock on my door and borrows him for a few hours, then he comes back in about 6 hours and still have to study and barely take care of his own mess. He has math exam this week. And he's started concentrating on it, which is difficult and takes time. Our neighbor called me to send him to her house so he could help her move furniture and carpets. She has huge carpets that are so heavy to lift. I told her he was busy studying for his exam, but after 30 minutes. I saw her daughter at our door asking for my son to come and hang out with her. My son said it was okay since he said he'd be gone for an hour. Next thing I knew he got back at 9 p.m. That's 5 hours later. Looking wet and extremely tried and worn out. He told me our neighbor had him clean up furniture and carpets, about 5 to 6 heavy carpets, and cleaned the entire living room after. I was so mad my son couldn't even finish studying. He took a bath and went to sleep instantly. I called my neighbor and raised my voice because I was really mad at her for making my son exhausted and causing him his math exam the next day. I told her that my son doesn't work for her and her daughter and to stop calling and sending her daughter to our house, and I hung up. My husband spoke with her and he was furious. Said that I have no respect for our neighbor and that I shouldn't berate her for just needing some help and that I have no right to not let her daughter into our house. My husband said I shouldn't say anything since our son is okay with it. He's not. Although he said nothing, he's not the type that would talk about what bothers him and instead just do what others ask of him. Not the asshole, he's not their slave. Who TF expects a random kid on the street to do many hours of chores for free? Help your kid learn to say no and respect his own boundaries. Not the asshole. She could be messing his future up, if he can't study for his tests. Also, neighbor's daughter lied to your son. I agree with your sum of objectives but not with your methods. 1. Your son needs to learn to say no. It's a critical life skill. 2. You need to have this discussion with your son. He's being taken advantage of and this is a great opportunity for him to learn to recognize that. 3. You're trying to solve your son's problems for him at an age when he should be learning to solve them for himself. Don't yell at other people, talk to your son about what's going on and what you're concerned about. Your neighbor is clearly exploiting your son and using her daughter to do so. Not the asshole. Your husband can slave himself. Talk to your son and tell him that you'd like for him to focus on himself and he doesn't owe anybody anything. Something about this doesn't read right. But assuming you are telling the full story, YTA for not ending this earlier. Your husband is an aw, your neighbor is an aw. Your son is the only one who is not, though it would be good to learn to stand up for himself a little. Did you really not notice he was gone for 5 hours? Why wouldn't you go over after 1 and get him? Not the asshole. Teach your son no as a full sentence SND. He comes first. Have him send a bill to their house for all the work they make him do. Not the asshole. This neighbor was totally taking advantage of your son's kindness. And there's nothing wrong with not respecting people like that. Respect is earned. Not the asshole. They are literally using him as a handyman. Not the asshole, and your husband needs to back you up. Not take the neighbor's side. When I was a kid I never talked either and wouldn't say no, partly cause I'd get in trouble, so I never felt like I was allowed. She is not even paying. When I was that age, if I had to do 5 to 6 hours of work helping a neighbor, it would be only on a weekend and they'd pay, not a lot but enough for a kid to feel like his time is respected. Info. Is your son getting paid for any of this work? Info. You need to teach him to say no and set boundaries, and your husband is an aw. But why don't you go get him after an hour? Why do you just let it go on? Also, when the mom called for help, you said no, then daughter comes over to get him to hang out. Why was that not a red flag for you? That seems blaringly obvious to me that she was getting him to do her mom's bidding. And if the mom is enslaving your son, what is her daughter doing during those times? Not working, I bet. I just have so many questions. Also, is there no virus where you live? I don't go into my neighbors' houses at all. But you do less. Your son probably, 1 is too polite to say no to your neighbor. 2 has a crush on your neighbor's daughter and likes spending all the time over there. He's relying on you to step in as his mother and get his priorities sorted a little. So neighbor is definitely a bigger asshole for using him as a handyman. But you could have stepped in earlier and more gently, instead of letting it fester then blowing up all at once. MIDK something doesn't seem right here. What teenage boy willingly, day after day, spends hours doing manual labor at a neighbor's with no complaint or reward? How does everyone sound off here but the mom? It sounds like the son probably had a crush on the daughter and enjoys hanging out over there. Mom sounds a bit overbearing. Son might be saying he's doing tasks so he has a reason to visit, and dad sounds aware of it and calling mom out on her controlling behavior. The incident where she literally told them he wasn't coming and he went anyway kinda brought it home for me. If he really wanted to stay home he wouldn't have gone against the easy out, right? Not the asshole your son is likely being polite or feeling that he has to help because he was asked. There's nothing wrong with standing up for him and shutting down his free labor for the woman and her daughter. The lovely divorcee might start asking OP's husband for some help around the house too. I hope he's not defending the neighbor because he finds her attractive. Not the asshole he probably has a crush on the daughter and the mom is taking advantage of that. Not the asshole but I'd ask the one you're married to some hard questions about his relationship with the neighbor too. Not the asshole. Also, it's very odd that your husband was furious. I'd keep both eyes wide open. This subreddit is a fucking joke. Not the asshole I'm gonna play devil's advocate and say you need to speak to your husband about boundaries with the neighbor because the way that he took her side significant other quickly is very fishy. Also saying you have no respect for her. This is a random woman. He shouldn't have any type of relationship with her that's remotely close enough to where he feels comfortable telling you and your son to respect her and her wishes over what's best for your family. Your son needs to grow a spine and speak up. He's old enough that he doesn't need his mom to fight his battles. The daughter was a sneaky thing by asking him to hang out. Not the asshole. Dig up a little, you husband probably has something going on with the neighbor or her daughter. I think we know why the boy is over their constantly teenage daughter. But how many times did you let them take advantage of him for hours and hours? If your son never saw you have his back and check on him he probably felt trapped, especially seeing his dad's reaction. Even knowing he had an exam you still didn't check on him the whole time. Everyone sucks here except your son. Am I the only one who thinks OP's son is hit the neighbor girl and that's why he's over there so much to spend time with her? Never saw someone trying so hard to get in some random girl's panties. Not the asshole let her know your son isn't her new husband. How good looking are they? Is the daughter the same age? Is your son socially naive? Not the asshole. You are the asshole. It's your son's job to say no, and yours as a parent to make sure he learns this important life skill. Yelling at the neighbor is completely misplaced. For all she knows, your son needs a break from his family and any excuse to not be at home. You are the asshole. The kids I keep in my basement work for free 24/7, why can't yours? Not the asshole. Your husband took this stranger's side over yours. You don't owe her respect and you decide who to let into your house. Your husband is out of line also. Something isn't right about this situation between the two of them. 5 hours of help. No. Unacceptable. What about his chores and homework in his own house? Nip this in the bud. Honestly, you should have never let this start to begin with. She can learn how to be a single mom without using your son for free manual labor. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. And I would put my husband in his place so fast for disrespecting me and standing by some other woman's side. He would have whiplash. Put your foot down and tell your son he is not allowed to go over there anymore. And let your husband know he can forget sleeping on the couch. The curb will be his bed if he ever tries to disrespect you like that again. Not the asshole. You clearly need to set a boundary for your son's sake. What the heck is your husband thinking that this is okay? And this neighbor is going behind your back to get at your son, and going through your husband now. Incredibly rude, and your husband needs to put his head back on where it belongs. Your son is not a workhorse. Not the asshole. I tell the husband to fuck off and leave. Never should a man choose another woman over his wife. I would make it very clear to the neighbor that they're not welcome to your house and how your son won't be coming over. I think your son has ulterior motives. He's horny. It happened to me when testosterone flowed freely. Not the asshole. Good on you to stick up for your son. And your husband is Seuss. I'd be really wary of whether he is interested in either mom or daughter, because him berating you about it is fucking weird. Not the asshole. He is a teen and she is basically having him clean up her house. Yeah, no. If your husband wants to help out so much, he should do it, then. There is help, and then there is abusing someone's time and generosity. I would carefully observe the relationship between the husband and the neighbor. Your husband and the neighbor are WTF, your husband should stand by your side. Not hers. Location flag. Not the asshole, but your husband sure as hell is. Why is he more worried about your neighbor feeling disrespected when she doesn't respect your boundaries or your son's time? You have no right to not let her daughter into your house, what? And your husband needs to back you up. It is shitty that he didn't. If your husband is okay with your son doing so much for them, then maybe he needs to step up and be at their beck and call for a while. You need to stop being polite to them. If the daughter arrives at your door, tell her to go away. If the woman calls, tell her to stop calling. If your son ends up going over there, if he is longer than an hour, go over to their house and demand that he comes back. Stop being nice to them because they are not considerate to your son at all. Man, if it wasn't such a big deal, why doesn't your husband be at her beck and call? Then maybe he could see how excessive it is. Not the asshole. Your husband can do all the heavy lifting and manual labor if he so desires. The education of your kid comes first. Not the asshole. We all agree Op's husband is the asshole, right? For expecting his wife to completely respect some random woman? For not also teaching his son boundaries? What about for bending to some random woman's whim instead of supporting his wife who just wants her son to be able to study and rest? Edit. I know upvotes don't matter, but my other comments saying that the husband was acting strange and she needs to check in with him to see if something is going on got a few hundred, so I'd say at least a couple of others agree with me here. She's taking advantage of him, but I would tell your son that, before erupting at your neighbor. I don't know why your son is doing it. Oh, your neighbor has a teenage daughter. That makes sense. Everyone sucks here apart from your son. He was gone 5 hours and you didn't think to look for him? You said he's not the sort to speak up for himself, so help him to learn and in the meantime keep an eye out so you can go intervene rather than shouting after the fact. Not the asshole. But update PLZ. Also, your husband seems real chill with her, maybe he should help out instead. Not the asshole. His education is important too, and she's teaching her daughter to use men for the heavy work instead of doing for herself, because some of this stuff sounds like something moderately competent people could do if they wanted to, not just male people. Plus, her daughter asked if he could hang out, and then they worked him like a mule when he needed to study. Sounds like they, and he, need to learn the meaning of no, and that it is a complete sentence. Neighbor is a user and she's teaching her daughter to be one too. Makes me wonder why she's divorced. Not the asshole. My guess is that your teenage son is enjoying getting attention from the two women, which teenage boys sometimes do, hormones and all. And she's taking full advantage of him. Your whole family has to have a talk about boundaries and setting them. However, if your son is still willing to help, so long as it's not interfering with his school or chores, it's his life and he can go help them.